Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom at 11 o'clock. And some breaking news for you. An enormous blast has been heard across Beirut in Lebanon. A security source has told the Reuters news agency that the blast was caused by an Israeli strike hitting central Beirut within the city's limits, not far from downtown. It is unknown at this stage if anybody is injured. Israel is carrying out an offensive against the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah in Lebanon, which partly prompted Iran to launch around 180 ballistic missiles at Israel last night. More news on that as we get it. The Prime Minister confirms there will be no return to freedom of movement in any reset of relations between the United Kingdom and the European Union. Sir Keir Starmer has been speaking at a press conference in Brussels where he met the European Union chiefs with a promise to put the Brexit years behind us and form a closer relationship with the bloc.
Now, of course, there will be issues which are difficult to resolve and on areas on which we will stand firm. There will be no return to freedom of movement, no return to the customs union, no return to the single market. But we will find constructive ways to work together and deliver for the British people.
Well, it's emerged Sir Keir Starmer's paid more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality received since becoming Prime Minister. Downing Street's confirmed he's covered the cost of 6 Taylor Swift tickets, 4 to the races and a clothing rental agreement with a high-end designer favoured by his wife, Lady Starmer. It comes after Sir Keir and other cabinet members who vowed to clean up British politics faced weeks of criticism for accepting tens of thousands of pounds worth of freebies from wealthy donors. A doctor charged over the death of Friends star Matthew Perry has pleaded guilty to a charge of illegally distributing the drug ketamine. Dr. Mark Chavez could face up to 10 years in prison when he is sentenced. He's today entered his plea during an appearance in a court in Los Angeles. He's one of 5 people charged in connection with Perry's death, 2 of which are scheduled to go on trial in March. Perry died at the age of 54 last October. And finally, the King's been showing off his dance moves tonight ahead of his trip to Samoa for the Commonwealth Heads of Governments meeting later this month. Well, it was a guest at His Majesty's Commonwealth reception who successfully persuaded him to join in a Samoan dance lesson. The King and Queen were hosting around 300 guests at St James's Palace in London, including the singer Grace Jones, the Strictly judged Motsi Mabuse and the rugby player Theo McFarland. And I suspect I'll be reporting on a lot more of His Majesty's moves in a few weeks' time. That's it from me for now. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. It's your first look at Thursday's top news stories with 3 comedians. I'm Andrew Doyle, that's one of the comedians. And joining me tonight are 2 Headliners' favourites, pretty boy Steve N. Allen and hired for his rugged good looks, Nick, the big dog, Dixon. Are you both well? I'm looking forward to a very positive show because it's been a difficult day and I want something to cheer me up. So are you going to be all jolly and...
You've hired the wrong man. Have you never met me before?
Yeah, you're very miserable and cantankerous, aren't you?
The intros are very positive. I'm an upbeat guy, Andrew.
Yes, maybe put a bit more energy into the delivery of those lines.
No, I'm really just a happy-go-lucky, easygoing, chilled-out entertainer.
You are very, very chilled out, and we're going to prove it in this show. Let's see what happens. OK, well, first we're going to look at the front pages. Thursday's Daily Telegraph leads with UK forces not up to defending Israelis. The Eye has got Israel vows rapid revenge strike on Iran. The Guardian, also with that story, US warns Israel, we won't support attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. The Daily Express has security chiefs fear rise in terror attacks in UK. The Daily Mail is running with Starmer coughs up £6,000 to pay for his freebies. And finally, the Daily Star has some nonsense about sandwiches. And those will be your front pages. OK, we're going to take a probing look at the front pages now. We're going to start with Thursday's Daily Mail, and Steve has got the deets.
We should mention at the top the what's inside this amazing story. I told my husband to choose between me and his bossy mother. He chose her. Yeah, but you said I told him, so he was choosing between two bossy outfits.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But very little difference between it. But the main headline: Starmer coughs up £6,000 to pay for his freebies.
Yes.
I saw that and I thought, well, that's solved that, isn't it? This story's going to go away. That's very much dealt with it. The thinking is they're trying to bring in some new rules about the way that this is all policed. And
Yes.
you're saying you've got to clear the decks, got to make sure it's all sorted.
Yes.
I mean, true. Do you know what would have been more true is to think, I'm the guy standing on the platform of very much being against sleaze and corruption.
Yes.
Why don't I take no freebies for a while? I know freebies. We all like freebies.
Thank you, Captain Hindsight. But maybe at the time he was just too tempted. But the Taylor Swift tickets. You can't, I mean, come on. Who would say no to that? You'd be mad.
I don't know. I didn't go and I survived.
You're all right, are you?
Yeah.
OK. But, Nick, you're a huge Taylor Swift fan. I mean, you must understand where Starmer was coming from.
Fan of the music, not the politics.
Is that right?
Yes. Yes. And in fact, the politics is so bad, I might even just throw the music in the metaphorical bin.
Separate the art from the
On
artist?
Spotify. So
shake it
I have
off?
to throw my actual phone.
Oh, I see.
I can to an extent, but there's a line, isn't there? P. Diddy might be
Yes.
the line.
Maybe.
R. Kelly. Where is the line? Great
Well,
question.
let's have a look at Starmer because,
Yes.
is it good enough?
Good point.
Well, I'm just saying because it is the story.
story, yeah.
It is the story,
Totes.
and we have a job to do. Do you not think is it enough now at this point to just give back the money and say, and pretend it never happened?
No, it's not enough, and it's amazing he didn't do it earlier, really, because it was so much pressure. And to be honest, I've never really minded gifts that much. It's the hypocrisy. I'm paraphrasing an Norma Dawn joke, but it is the hypocrisy that bothers me more because I think politicians are underpaid. So I don't actually mind gifts that much. But what I mind is, of course, his relentless going on about Tory cronyism and then just does this himself and then didn't see any problem with it. And I think also this shows they are worried about popularity because he's sort of been above the phrase time. It's like he doesn't care about when anyone says, like, I've got my majority, I don't care.
Yes.
But this shows they do care and they will buckle under pressure. And also, I think the way it's been covered reveals a kind of underlying hatred for this Labour Party. The media's kind of gone after him. There hasn't been this honeymoon period we had with Blair.
No.
And I think no one actually likes this government. It was just kind of waiting to get them.
Well, the polls are very bad even among traditional Labour voters. People really want him to stand down, don't they? Do you think that just on a PR level, the fact that it was Taylor Swift is going to save him? If it had been Ed Sheeran, might this be a bit more unforgivable?
Yeah, he'd have been gone by now.
Exactly,
Right? If it
that's
weren't for
what
the
I
Taylor
think.
Swift effect. Yeah, unbelievable. And the idea of the box at whichever football... I'm not into football, but I can I know what people who like football are like. Is it Arsenal?
Yes.
I've seen football people. No wonder... Of course he'd bite someone's hand off at some free football.
Because he wants the box, rather. Because if you don't have the box, you have to stand in, what are they called?
The
rows, the stands.
Yes.
Or the
But he could have
terraces.
just paid for the box, anticipating this. If he really thought he was going to win...
Yes.
Also, he's quite a high-profile figure anyway. Why not just pay for a box ahead of time?
Yeah, no, OK, well, some thoughts there. We're going to move on to the Express now. Nick, what has the Express got on Thursday's front cover?
Maybe you're not allowed to just pay for a box. The Express has security chiefs fear rise in terror attacks in UK. And this comes from the Community Security Trust, which is a charity looking out for the safety of Jewish people. And they're very concerned with the October 7th anniversary approaching. That this, combined with the ongoing situation in the Middle East, will lead to attacks on British Jewish people. And this seems, of course, fairly likely, given, or very possible, given the kind of scenes we've seen on the streets over the last year.
Well, I mean, it's not rocket science. That happens a lot. Whenever there's international conflicts, the terror level tends to rise.
Yeah, especially if you filled your country with people who identify more with other countries and then who are backed up by far-left people who don't actually commit the terrorist acts but just celebrate them on Twitter.
Yes, controversial. Do you think Nick's right?
Do you know, I'm going to quote Simon Evans, but I listened to him on a different podcast, not on this show. He was saying an interesting...
He does other things?
It's
And you think this is a podcast?
It used to be, didn't it? He pointed out that when it comes to this particular issue, it's the only one where if Israel do some sort of attack, there'll be some anti-Semitism increase.
Yes.
And if people attack Israel, there's an anti-Semitism increase.
Yes.
You can't win either way. It all kind of filters into that problem.
Yes, there was a spike in anti-Semitism after the pogrom on October the 7th.
Yep.
So there is absolutely nothing they can do in this situation.
So, I mean, like, the headline's right. You read the story, it just says increased vigilance. That's also the only thing we can do.
Well, seems sensible enough to me. We're going to move on to the front cover of Thursday's Telegraph. What have they got?
They've got a story, a £1 billion fleet of trains in sidings as unions whine about the wipers. The wipers aren't the right size. That seems valid. So we can just quickly move on to UK forces not up to defending Israelis. The first couple of paragraphs are so upsetting. So the RAF Typhoon jet fighters are thought to lack the firepower needed.
Yes.
Sir Ben Wallace said that the UK's Type 45 anti-missile destroyers would struggle to respond. The Royal Navy carrier strike groups do not have enough sailors. How about we don't say this out loud, because they're going to think of invading us now.
Sure.
I'd invade us now and probably get away with it.
But at least we're reminded we have a navy. I thought we got rid of that ages ago. But the thing is about that,
Pedlos now.
we do need some sort of. Was it not the case that in the Iran bombardment against Israel the other night that there was a US interception going on, but they have a higher technology even than the Iron Dome?
Yes, yes. This is simply saying that we aren't going to be that much use, but we're not being asked.
No, well, we're not that much use, are we? And our Navy and our military has been depleted for a number of years now. Was that a mistake, Nick?
Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing. I mean, number one, I agree with Steve. I was going to say the same thing. There's a balance between raising the alarm and raising funding and admitting to the world that we can't do anything.
Yes.
So that's a bit of a problem. But I see why he's doing it, Wallace. And the other thing is, it is a bit embarrassing. We've only been able to assist the US is all we can do now.
Yes.
It's basically like, all right, yeah, you guys come along, but we're just coming along for like the kind of fake gold star, like the participation trophy. We're not really doing anything. That is embarrassing.
Bring the adapters. I think that's probably what happens.
Oh, right.
We can help you. That's a 2-pin thing.
The 3-pin, yeah, we've got the plugs. But and we invented their language. But the other thing is, do we really want to be a kind of a military power? This is what we have to think about as well. You know, we're a poor country now. We've got so many problems of our own domestically. Do we want to be? Is it better to like double down and try and be Switzerland and just focus on banking or something?
Yeah.
Our best industry is financial services. Why not just become Switzerland and say we don't care about the world?
We can't do chocolate. I mean, the comparison isn't even there.
Well, we've got financial services.
Yes.
Quite
What else have we
cold.
got? Fish and chips.
Quite cold weather.
Yes.
We like tennis.
We do quite like tennis. Croquet. Some people like that.
Skiing, people like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I mean, I think we need... in a sense, I think it's probably a good idea to have a sound security services anyway. Yeah. But I think maybe one of the reasons why Wallace is making this point is to try and get more money.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well,
that's fair enough, isn't it?
I was just going to say the Swiss Army have the knives.
That's true.
Didn't they sell a version of the Swiss Army knife without the knife?
Yes, that's available.
But they never use it. It's always neutral. But they're just like, oh, we've got the best knife, but we're not going to get involved.
But if they came out with one of those.
If they did.
That's why no one messes with it.
If they ever rose up
just
with
you
those
wait
knives.
there.
No, they can open bottles quicker than any other army. True. So, you know, scary stuff. We're going to move on now to the Daily Star. Let's get this over with. Nick, what's going on?
No, this is important, Andrew. It's Line of Duty stars Sarnie Torment. And this is Anna Maxwell Martin. And I've never watched this show because I believe it's on the BBC. Of course, I would never watch. I'd be a traitor. But she won't have sandwiches anywhere on set. And you sort of understand, like, if you're working with a Louis Schaefer, only eats raw meat, doesn't brush his teeth. You go, OK, I can understand having a problem with that. Sandwiches seems very mainstream. She can't be near an open fridge. This seems like a real problem. She says it stems from her pregnancy when everything was making her feel sick, so I have some sympathy there. And she compared it to a friend who said they could not take the chewing of gum, but that's actually a condition, because I knew someone that had that. That's misophonia, which is a thing. This, I don't think, is a thing, fear of sandwiches.
She's got a fear, it's a phobia of sandwiches.
A phobia of sandwiches and open fridges, stemming from her difficult pregnancy where she was accosted by sandwiches.
Well, I don't want to sound unsympathetic, but it sounds like a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, when are you ever going to... Well, I'm just...
Do you hate pregnant women? Why do you hate
pregnant women? I don't hate pregnant women. I want to establish that right now. It does, however, remind me of the scene in Young Sherlock Holmes when Watson hallucinates an open fridge and a bunch of eclairs come out and try and kill him.
She cited mayonnaise as well.
Great way to go.
Problem. Sorry,
I'd take the sandwich, open it up, you've got 2 pizzas, stop moaning. It's about how you perceive the world.
Yes.
Also, this misophonia thing, I think, the people who don't like the sound of other people chewing, they need to be told it's not all about you. Other people need to eat.
Yeah, they need to
stop
chew.
moaning about
Chewing
sound.
is never going to sound graceful.
Yeah.
It's something that has to be done. Stop being so aggressive about mastication. That would be my suggestion.
Well pronounced.
I pronounced it perfectly. So those are the front pages out of the way. Do join us in part 2 for updates from the Tory Party conference, shocking news from the Tavistock Clinic yet again, and we find out what's 17 years old that really shouldn't be. I don't know what that sentence means, but I said it anyway. See you in 2.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Founded in 1990 in Knightsbridge in London, the Beverly Hills Bakery offers some of the finest American baked goods in the United Kingdom. Beverly Hills Bakery has delivered gifts to all the UK Prime Ministers of the last 20 years, with, I think, the exception of Sir Keir Starmer so far, and provided gifts for the royal family and for royal births. As we near the 35th anniversary of the bakery, I'm joined by the owner and head pastry chef, Rosa de Souza, and Manuel de Souza, who is the director of the Beverly Hills Bakery. How marvellous to you both. Welcome to GB News.
Thank you for inviting us.
So, why has this formula worked? Why did London need a Beverly Hills Bakery?
What we do is we're a bakery, but underlying it's actually a gifting experience.
Right.
So this is an alternative to flowers. So in terms of concept, that has maintained its originality despite going on for 35 years. And in fact, what I do is I often ask myself, why is it going strong? To remind myself to focus on those things that we need to focus on.
So instead of sending a bunch of flowers, you send a beautiful
box
of cakes like that,
or
confection like that, complete with bunnies and so on.
Exactly. So you have the concept on the one hand, but you also need the quality of product that goes inside. And I think that's where Beverly Hills Bakery has got a great product.
And it's where Rosa comes in, isn't it?
Yes.
So when did you start to bake? Did you start to bake domestically in your home, and did it spread from there?
We started from home. My mother's baking, where we didn't have all the stoves and things like that. We baked on the charcoal, you know, like the grease.
Yes.
And we started baking. I learned from my mother the baking.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, you lucky things. We're going to be looking at Thursday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle, still joined by Steve N. Allen and the big dog. So we're going to begin this section with Thursday's Guardian. Kemi Badenoch would like to see prisons even more crowded, Steve.
Yep, some civil servants so bad they should be in prison.
Gosh.
Says Kemi. Well, Kemi, technically civil servants include people who work in prison, so they are. It's not the strongest takedown I've ever done on this show. I brought some weak
You
source,
need more trash talk
I Googled
in your armoury.
So at the Tory party conference, one of those fringe events, she said that some of them leak secrets and undermine ministers. And we all know that that is the job of other ministers.
Yes.
You don't like them getting involved. Now, people will always say, even on shows like this, it's the blob, innit? Oh, we know what the blob's like. But the General Secretary of the FDA Union, Dave Penman, says this. I'm going to read the quote. I think it's great. These are serious accusations from a former Secretary of State. If she has evidence to back up those claims, she should publish it, otherwise withdraw the statement. There's nothing wrong in that sentence. That's absolutely bang on.
That seems fair
enough. And if it's true that, we all know what the blob's like, she must be swimming in evidence, so bring it. Or maybe we start thinking about how much of a convenient thing it is to blame the civil servants.
Two things, though, Steve. I mean, for one thing, Dave Penman, this guy who said this, he may regret that, because I imagine she does actually have quite a lot of evidence of this sort of stuff. And I also imagine it's not the sort of thing she would have said without having some basis for it. I mean, I know that Kemi Badenoch has talked before about being obstructed by civil servants in quite an ideological way, and she definitely has evidence for that. But the other thing is this. Was she not joking a little bit? I mean, the quote here says, there's about 5 to 10% of them who are very, very bad. You know, should be in prison bad. Sounds a bit like a quip. Is that not... Am I misreading that, Nick?
No, I think that's reasonable. I didn't actually see this part. I have watched a lot of the conference. You're at the conference, maybe she was on stage, yeah, maybe you're making a joke. It's exaggeration. It's like that guy who said, I'm not saying it's exactly the same, when he said Diane Abbott should be shot or something. It's not literal. This doesn't seem literal to me. She's just saying that they're awful. I was surprised it was as low as 10%, frankly, given what the blob's like. Steve.
Yeah, the blob.
And this is the kind of thing, this is pure chemistry. So this is the bluntness that I like from her, which is one of her selling points. She's an engineer, she keeps saying, she's just tells it like it is.
Yes.
But also it makes things politically difficult for her because now she's going to have to, if she wins, or even if she doesn't win, she has to continue working with these people.
Yes.
And now they all hate her even more.
Well, let me just ask you, Steve, a bit further about the blob. I mean, the point is, though, that there is quite a lot of evidence of, and there have been a number of whistleblowers from the civil service who say that it is ideologically captured, that a significant proportion of the civil service don't implement the job they're meant to. They don't implement what the ministers tell them to for partisan reasons.
Very
so
much
there is a
seems like
problem.
and it's a problem. It's their problem. If you're in charge of this, get it fixed in the 14 years that you just had or something. The interview that I heard Liz Truss do, it really informed... Well, because she's been speaking for ages about how the blob part of the thing, this conspiracy against her. And when she was pushed on it, the only example she could come up with is they drag their heels in implementing things.
No, there's a lot more in the articles I've read from whistleblowers.
Well, she was only there for 49 days.
Oh, yeah, to be fair.
Listen to Stephen Edgington's pieces on them saying that Farage should be assaulted and things like that. These are beliefs that go around in the civil service. And when you say 14 years to fix it, not that simple. As people like Dominic Cummings have pointed out, it's very hard to actually sack a lot of these people. You don't have the power to sack them.
Is it, Nick? I mean, because I often think, they always talk about the bonfire of the Quangos and they never actually light the fuse. I think just blow the whole thing up.
Yeah, Cummings has said, he said something like a minister can only sack 3 people or something. There's all these, rules with Byzantine complexity in terms of actually getting rid of...
Really?
No, it's not so easy. You can just go in and clear them out, or it would have been done by now.
Yeah, maybe. OK, well, I will defer to your judgment. I know very little about it. We're going to move on now to this terrible story in the Daily Mail. Nick, you've got the details on this?
Yeah, this is psychologist 53 who works at Tavistock Clinic remains free to practice despite being caught grooming a schoolboy 15 for sex in a park. And it's as bad as it sounds. This is Dr. Ross Kinnaid, and he was entrusted to treat youngsters' mental health as lead psychologist at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust, which we've heard so much about. But he was caught by a group of paedophile hunters, because this is the kind of dystopia we have now. When law enforcement fails, you have to just have roaming paedophile hunters because you've got roaming paedophiles, apparently.
As in vigilantes.
Exactly. And they caught him. But actually, aside from that, he has pled guilty on July 29th to attempting to meet a child following sexual grooming. The child clearly said he was 15, but they met anyway for sex in a park. And he was sacked by Tavistock, but he's not been suspended by the regulator, so he still remains free to practice. It's insanity.
So, I mean, the Tavistock has not been covered in glory recently. It's been utterly disgraced following the Cass review, forced to shut down. We hear all sorts of terrible things about the institutional homophobia there and all of the problems. Well, this is a group that were medicalising kids because they weren't gender conforming, So not a great place to work, for a start. Whistleblowers ignored left, right and centre, ideological capture, the lot. But this is surely... I mean, Steve, I can't imagine you're going to give a contrary position on this, but if you have found guilty, actually pleaded guilty to a paedophilic act, or at least intending to meet up with a young person under the age of consent, he should never work with children again. It should be a no-brainer.
I'm not going to disagree with that. The only pushback I would say is the Tavistock did suspend him.
They've sacked him.
And they sacked him. And so in terms of height of bar, that's so low, that bar is...
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that holds carpet down. Yeah. One of those bars.
I'm not blaming the Tavistock for him, by the way. I'm just saying that this is adding to this litany
Now, this is
of
the council.
bad press.
You could blame them for hiring him in the first place, perhaps.
But they wouldn't have known this.
Right. But this is the Health and Care Professional Council, though if you go on their website, and they're there to try and make sure that they only have on their books the proper non-paedophile... I mean, this is the case. Not only is he working with children, but working with vulnerable children. So it's all doubled up there.
Yes.
The Health and Care Profession Council said this has been forwarded to the relevant department for their attention. So at least now they've sent an email about it.
Well, maybe they'll rethink this following the publicity.
Hope so.
You would hope so. OK, we're going to move on now to a bombshell in the Express. Steve, you got this?
Number of Tory members wanting merger with Farage's reform revealed in bombshell poll.
We can't use that word enough, can we, really?
My favourite kind of poll.
It excites it makes every headline sound more exciting, doesn't it?
Because this is a survey of 470 people.
Yes.
That's less exciting than bombshell poll.
Yes.
More than half, 53% of those 470 people, of Conservative members, want the party to merge. I mean, I'm not sure why, because most Reform MPs say no. All the people running to be Tory leaders say no. They would hate each other so much, people like Abbott and Costello. But this was a survey for the Liz Truss right-wing popular conservatism group. Oh, so now she'll listen to the opinions of other people. But I mean, look, I'm not sure it would be the wisest of moves in terms of general election. Yeah, you'd get all the Reform votes back, but you would be risking the big lump of people in the centre ground who wouldn't vote for you. If you're trying to win a general election and appeal to the nation, that's one thing. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage says he doesn't want to merge with the Tories, and this is a man who said he wouldn't stand in the election and is now the MP for Clacton. So he's a man of his word, is what I'm saying.
And your esteemed colleague you left out. Go on.
Go on. Well, Nick, I mean, you know, you predicted that Farage would be leader of the Tory party. They call you a Nostradixus.
Yeah.
Don't they? Or Dixonus.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't really work, does it? Listen, I think that you had a point, and maybe this is edging towards your worldview.
Yeah, I said in 2029 it will happen, and it looked impossible, but maybe it could happen, though Farage does deny it, as Steve just said. Something's got to happen because we're going to get Labour again. So
are we?
A strategic... Yeah, well, everyone hates Labour, but unless you do something... The next election, I believe, is going to be very strategic. Look at all those independent candidates that popped up and basically said, I hate Israel, and almost won. So it's going to be about strategic... It's going to be about strategy seat by seat,
yes,
which is how Labour did so well. Partly there was these unofficial sort of alliances and so on. I think Reform and Tories have to do that because... People wanted the Tories to be destroyed, some people, 0 seats, etc. Given that that didn't happen, I don't think it's going to happen, and given that neither of them is going to back down, the only way to avoid Labour winning again is to be strategic and do something like that, in my opinion, unless they sort it out by then. But it's interesting, at the conference, Kemi said that Reform are not a serious party. She said she's looked at their manifesto, she doesn't think they're serious. She said that she respects the voters, because they are Tory people and that she's on the doorstep, but that she thinks the party are not serious. She thinks they're too pro-state intervention. And a kind of difference emerged in that conference. Every Tory was talking about small state and Thatcherism, and Reform, even though Farage is seen as a kind of Thatcherite, now start to seem more like sort of they're prepared to do more state intervention, maybe part of the sort of more of the NatCon kind of right. So that a distinction starts to emerge.
Something probably does have to happen, doesn't it? But, I mean, I just wonder whether it is... I mean, the Starmer's numbers are tanking, you know, and as you say, Nick, everyone wanted to punish the Tories last time. And so is it just the case that we're going to have these massive swings from one massive majority to the other massive majority until eventually, in about 20 years' time, people will realise both parties are a waste of time and they'll all vote for the SDP and we'll live happily ever after?
If you want to cash in on that, though, you have to be stood ready to catch those centre-ground voters who are going to be like, oh, I'm appalled by the Tay-Tay tickets. If you want to get those, there's no point moving further to the right and then not being able to catch those voters when they become available.
It doesn't work. This tacking to the centre thing, it just doesn't work.
Well, it worked for Labour.
For the Tories, it hasn't worked. If you look at it, Jacob Rees-Mogg was very good on this. He went through historically and pointed out it hasn't worked. Actually, conviction politicians, more like Thatcher, have actually done better, so I don't believe in...
So you need Tories to go to the right?
Correct.
OK, we'll see what happens. We're going to move on now to The Independent. The Home Office deserves a visit from the Guinness World Records people, Nick.
Yeah, this is oldest asylum claim is nearly 17 years old, Home Office records show. So, I mean, this is mad. There's also another 19 cases between 10 and 16 and a half years old. So this was a guy who was being reviewed. I don't know if it even says guy, but we can imagine. Because they were trying to figure out if he'd been involved with war crimes and crimes against humanity. And I might say, if it takes you 17 years to figure out the nuance of whether he's actually done war crimes, maybe we don't need this person in the country anyway. It's not the death penalty where it has to be absolutely bang on. It's like, we've got an overcrowded country anyway. Maybe we don't take the war crimes, the maybe war crimes people.
Yeah, maybe. That would be a good shortcut.
Yeah, just an idea.
Just filter out the potential war crimes.
And there are other cases where prisoners were serving life sentences, another was a convicted sex offender. So we're just letting in, or we're taking ages to decide about these awful people.
And what a terrible headline, The Independent. Oldest asylum claim is nearly 17 years old. It sounds like they're saying the oldest asylum claimant is almost 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Just badly phrased, but that's The Independent for you. What do you think about this, Steve?
Well, my favourite bit is it says in some cases these people are in jail, overseas or deceased. I could speed up your system for you.
Yeah.
The deceased ones, let's just get rid of them. Let's say no, because they're not going to go to appeal. Overseas, already not here. Feels like you've done the job already. In jail, and actually in jail is the interesting one. That's why it's taken 17 years. They've not been sat around going, War crimes, though, and it is that you can't follow through on processing these while people are in prison.
It's just mad bureaucracy, basically. Okay.
My idea was funnier, though, but not accurate.
Not true, yeah.
Although the deceased ones are less...
That's what I'm going for.
The deceased ones won't commit crimes, at least.
Let's have those. We'll take the deceased, but we'll get rid of the rest.
Yeah, solve a lot of our problems. OK, they could work in the civil service. They'd do just as good a job. Anyway, we're going to close this section with Thursday's Telegraph now. Robert Jenrick talking tough. Who's got this?
World and his wife cannot come to Britain, says Jenrick. He's the front runner in the leadership thing, and he said that mass migration is putting immense pressure on housing, hospitals and roads. That's the conversation to be having, the infrastructure one. I reckon you can frame that in a way that the left and the right can actually do some good in having that conversation. But he's also realising if you want to get down to the final two, or if you do get down to the final two, you've got to lean to the right, because it will be the Conservative voters picking between you and your other person.
Or maybe he just genuinely believes in these principles.
Yeah, no. Robert Jenrick said there is no future for the Tories unless they confront the small boat crisis. Meanwhile, this might be awkward, but in today's Sun, here's a headline: migrant channel crossings fall to lowest in 4 years in boost to Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. And that's not like the Sun's going to be, I can't think of a non-bottom related, being big fans of the Labour Party.
Yes.
So who knows? No one knows how this is happening, but somehow Labour might be shooting the fox before the hunt.
OK, now, Jenrick, the world and his wife cannot come to Britain. It's a very heteronormative phrase, isn't it? I don't think that'll go down well with the membership. But it says here he was the only candidate to speak without notes. That seems to be the clincher these days.
Yeah, I watched his speech. I thought Kemi spoke slightly better, but Jenrick was very good in the Q&A with GB's choppers afterwards. I like Jenrick. Steve's being cynical, but he did resign over the Rwanda bill because he felt it wasn't going to be effective. He's recognised the need to sort immigration. He mentioned small boats, but he also talks about essentially freezing net migration. He talks about borders, net zero, building, having a small state. Again, that's that Thatcherite stuff, and our nation and culture, which is more vague. We have to get tough on immigration. I kind of resent it. I mean, I like the 90s world we had, where we could all have, like, interesting books and films and stuff, and we didn't have to be too hardline. But because of neglect and obscene immigration policy for years, we now all have to, like, end up sounding like the AFD and these parties well, I have to anyway, because something has to be done. And Jenrick's recognised that. You can't just be, like, nice and fluffy anymore. You've got to say, right, we have to do something about immigration as priority number one.
Well, we'll find out, won't we? That's the end of part two. Do join us after the break to find out what children are learning at school, what schools feel they need to apologise for, and what Labour are doing to improve mental health. Don't go away.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's going to be a cold night ahead with some frost and fog in places, but generally high pressure is building, bringing plenty of fine and settled weather to come. Still low pressure dominating across the south, so cloudier here with some showers, but high pressure in the north is building across the country, bringing plenty of fine and settled weather. Now, as we head into this evening, still some cloud across the south, but it is generally breaking up as we head into the overnight period, so leaving plenty of clear spells. Largely dry, though, still the chance of a few showers just poking into the southeastern coasts. But otherwise, a dry night for many, plenty of clear spells, so it will be feeling cold with some fog in places too, particularly in northern areas. Might just be a little bit slow to clear by the time we reach tomorrow morning as well. So as I say, particularly across Scotland, it will be feeling cold, likely to see some grass frost, may even see a little bit of frost on your cars during the early hours of the morning, and there will be fog in places too, so do take care when travelling. This generally lifting and breaking through the course of the morning, but as I say, there may be some stubborn fog, which is slow to clear. Largely dry across the south, still those showers just feeding into the southeast coast. But as I say, high pressure building, bringing plenty of fine and settled weather across the country. There is still the chance of the odd shower across the southeast, but you'll probably be unlucky if you do catch any. Largely dry, plenty of sunny spells and some lighter winds as well. So even though temperatures are generally round about average with highs of around 16, 17 in the southeast, it'll probably feel more pleasant in those lighter winds. As we head into Friday, still plenty of fine and settled weather around, but low pressure is trying to edge its way into the west. So cloudier here with some outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. And there will still be plenty of fine, dry weather across the country as we head into the weekend, but we are expecting some more unsettled spells as well. So as always, stay tuned for all the details. Bye for now.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's your first look at Thursday's newspapers. We're going to begin this section with The Express and sex education. That's Nick's speciality.
Thank you, Andy. It's Miriam Cates. That's my side job. Miriam Cates accuses activists of hijacking UK's sex education curriculum with inappropriate material. And it's nothing really new. It's just it's these things we've seen before. The Relationships, Health and Sex Education, RHSE, coming up with all this stuff. There's nothing really new about it. It's these horrible things where they're being taught things like rough sex and things in school, and you go, why are they being taught this? People talk about a 6-year-old being taught about masturbation.
So Miriam Cates has been raising this alarm
for years. That's what I say.
Time,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not new, but it is completely awful. And what you see is, you go, why are they teaching this to kids? And I'm left with sort of two main conclusions. One is that the ideology just wants to take the children off the parents, essentially, this prevailing ideology we have. And the second part is that it's degenerate. So
well, isn't a lot of it external, like people they brought in, like, you know, Stonewall or the equivalent?
Yeah,
you know,
I mean the prevailing ideology, whatever you want to call it, wokeness, that pervades so many institutions.
Yes.
One thing we know about it is that it likes to take authority from the parents and say, oh, don't report this, and so on. And the other thing we know about it is that it's degenerate. So that's why you get...
I mean, the thing about I mean, I've seen some of the a parent, someone I know who is a parent, showed me some of the stuff that was being showed to her, I think 6-year-old kid, and it was pretty grim. And then when she contacted them, the school said, well, we've got no choice, the government makes us do this. And I'm sure that's not right. I'm sure it is these outside companies, isn't it?
I imagine they've mandated that you have these type of lessons.
Yes.
But I'm sure they're not down to the level. There's one of the things listed in here, the dice game, which apparently has different pictures of body parts. You roll 2 dice, and then you have to come up with a position that would link those.
That sounds like an adult game.
I don't think I could do... There are certainly some that if you rolled, I wouldn't work out what to do with it. And I've been around it. I've seen it.
I thought you were going to say you couldn't find it in your heart to teach kids that. That's what I'd be thinking. I'd be like, I'm not going to teach this sick stuff to kids. But don't you find yourself asking why? That's what I very badly tried to articulate.
But that's what I mean. I think it's these outside activists. I don't think it's... I think the teachers are kind of relieved not to have to do this.
But why do the activists want to do it?
Well, I mean, I can't probe inside the minds of strangers, but I would say that perhaps they think... Perhaps they genuinely... It's like, you remember that show, that theatre show, the family sex show?
Yeah.
Where they had nudity on stage. This show was aimed at 5- and 6-year-olds. They had really explicit language about sexual activity. And then, you know, I heard some of the people talking about it. I think they genuinely think that if you introduce kids to this stuff, then they will have healthier, happier adult lives in later years. But it's obviously deranged.
Yeah, although they'd be better at that dice game than I am, and I'm a grown man. So, you know, you win.
Well, I think it's unpleasant. I think Miriam Cates is right to flag it.
Yeah.
You know, anyway. Let's move on. Another filthy show. This is the Daily Mail. This is... what's this one about? This is... Sorry, wrong story. This is LGBT relationships. What's going on with this one?
You want to do that one? I can do that one.
Go on. Is that you, Nick?
Yeah. This is school assistant sacked for her Christian beliefs after she criticised plans to teach LGBT plus relationships to pupils. Fights dismissal in court. So this was Christy Higgs, who's 47. He was sacked for gross misconduct by Farmers School in Fairford, Gloucestershire. And it's not exactly clear what was going to be taught about these LGBT plus relationships, but she objected to it.
But it was on Facebook.
On Facebook,
it was
she had 100 friends. It was, it didn't, you know, it was silly. It was, trivial. But she said they were brainwashing our children, which of course they are. I don't know specifically what with in this case, but no one seriously could deny they're not trying to indoctrinate children into the prevailing ideology.
But so, have you read what she wrote on Facebook?
I read that she she said they were brainwashing our children.
Because the school apparently said they defended their decision by saying it's to do with the language that she used, not the sentiments. In other words, they're saying we're not criminalising her opinion or judging her opinion. We're saying the language was the problem.
Yeah, it's hard because it doesn't say exactly what the proposals were and exactly what her riposte was. So it's a little bit tricky in the article. But in general, one feels she feels she's been discriminated against as a Christian. In general, surely it's pretty obvious that, yes, Christians are discriminated against in this culture now in favour of this prevailing ideology, sometimes called woke.
Why, Steve, would it matter what a teacher puts on their private Facebook page to 100-odd friends and family?
I think the problem is she's saying something on Facebook, all those caveats, about her employer. And her employer might think, I don't want someone who thinks I'm brainwashing children as an employee. It's not necessarily... I know the headline is saying sacked for her Christian beliefs, but she's sacked for her actions, and the actions were to call the employer a brainwasher.
So that's a good point, Nick. I mean, if that is the case, that you've... Because part of many contracts is you can't slag off your employer publicly. I mean, that's kind of a reasonable thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and is one's Facebook public if you're saying it's your friends on Facebook? I mean, I guess it is.
It's not that public, is it? Because you can only you have to be a friend to see the posts.
See, is it not?
No, you can't. It's not. You can't go on someone's Facebook page and just read their post if you're not a friend of theirs.
And that's actually defining what public is. And yeah, it's the thin end of the wedge if it's 100 people. But I suppose where would you draw the line? It's definitely not private if 100 people can see it.
Okay.
I've done worse gigs.
OK. OK, well, let's move on to this one. This is The Telegraph next. Durham Students' Union tries to stop free speech and open debate getting in the way of university life.
Yeah, free speech row at Durham University after debating society blocked from campus events. This is Freshers' Week.
Yes.
And you think they would be able to put together an argument to win that one. It's if you can't win that argument, why should you be there? But the Durham Union Society, a 182-year-old debating society, barred from taking part in the intake, trying to recruit.
As in the Freshers' Fair,
yeah. The Free Speech Union claims that it's because the debating society isn't left-wing enough. The organisers of Freshers' Week, Durham Student Union, say it's because they haven't met DEI criteria.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it's that they're agreeing. They seem to be falling out, but they both seem to be saying they're not left-wing enough.
So is that what it is, Nick? It can't be that, can it?
Well, it's more nuanced. I mean, they wanted them to improve their track record or show that they were making progress.
On what?
On equality, diversity and inclusion. But of course, that in itself is an ideological statement.
Yeah.
The claim here that Toby Young is making in the Free Speech Union is that actually you could see from their website that they just didn't like this society. They sort of were mocking them and calling them tuxedo-clad provocateurs. And
is this because they invite right-wing people onto campus?
That's what it seemed like. But my claim is that even on their own premise, that they hadn't done enough to improve DEI, that in itself is an overtly ideological premise that should be rejected anyway. Because why should they adhere to that if they're a free speech organisation?
Isn't one of the principles that is related to DEI, the woke movement, is no debate? So I guess by even having a debating society, you're violating some of their principles.
Yeah, it very much seems like for some people the concept of debate seems right-wing.
Yes.
Which means...
because they're winning.
Yeah,
because the left are winning.
Well,
so they don't want any debate.
I mean, I always say you can't win an argument if you refuse to have it. So actually, they're not winning, but they're not losing.
If you've already won, then it's like, I'm just going to take my ball and not play because we've already won.
It's like if you don't turn up to the battlefield, you can say, well, I would have won that.
Yeah,
if I'd have
didn't lose it.
Well, yeah, OK, very depressing, though, isn't it? We're talking about universities. Anyway, we're going to close this section with the Times now and Labour taking action that sounds off-brand.
Yeah, this is job advisors in hospitals to get mental health patients back to work. And it's essentially their solution to mental health problems is get a job, get on your bike and get a job. And so that's why you say off-brand for Labour. It's essentially talking about the dignity of work and how work actually helps you. It was done at Maudsley Hospital in South London, and they allegedly found that 55% of patients got back to work, or this model shows that, versus 28% offered normal treatment. I'm not exactly clear what the treatment is, but as far as I can see, it's saying stop moaning, work, and then your mental health problems will be cured.
But if they get
and by the way, we desperately need that for the economy brackets.
Yeah, the economy boost is almost a side effect, isn't it? If they go in there on a bike, Labour would like it. So that's
right,
good.
It's healthy.
But I mean, the idea of if you've got mental health issues, work is good for you. It is. The research shows you, and from our own existence, we know working can make you feel good about things.
Is there a caveat about working with Lewis Schaefer?
That makes you feel worse. I'll give you that. But the fact that it's in hospitals, you do think be careful about which. If you're in hospital with mental health issues, be careful about which job you get. Like, don't go down the joke shop. He doesn't like loud noises. And there was a bit... I was listening to this on the way in. It said there's a pilot scheme. And for a second, I was like, don't make them pilots.
Don't do that.
This is your captain speaking. I think I've reached the end of my tether. No, land first.
OK, well, look, we've got one more section to go, so please do join us after the break. We're going to be talking about the cunning plans of Oasis fans, a revolutionary dog care product, and a mushroom fit for Halloween. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
GB News presenter Mr. Patrick Christys is going to live off £15 per week as part of his Friends of the Elderly fundraiser.
Yeah, so far Patrick's raised over £193,000 with the help of all of you at home and all of your generous donations. So thank you so much for all of that. And thank you, Patrick, for coming up with this and flying the flag, I suppose, for these people who feel as if they're being victimised at the moment. Very, very worried about the winter fuel payment. Just tell us how you set upon this £15 figure.
Yeah, absolutely. So the £15 food figure was based around a conversation I had with a pensioner called Sue in Cheshire, who told me, and our viewers, quite a horrendous story, actually, about what she has to live off every week. £15 is her food budget. Her boiler's gone. She can't afford to replace that. She's worried about whether or not she can afford to even put an electric blanket on. She is essentially too proud to actually officially ask for help. We had to really convince her to come on and tell her story so that she thought, you know, she would do it so that she could help others, really. That's why she did it. So I thought, well, you know, it's not absolutely freezing yet. There's things I'm going to do as it gets colder and as winter proper kicks on. So I'll do a few bits and bobs there that might be more physically demanding to raise a bit of money. But this is something I can do in the meantime. So I thought, well, I'd live off £15 a week. £13.55 to be precise. Left myself some wiggle room in case I want a can of Diet Coke or something over the course of the week. But this is the food shop that I did yesterday. I've got some lentils, a bit of couscous, a couple of tins of tuna, some tomatoes, some peppers, bits of pasta, some eggs, and a stir-fry thing that I think I'm actually going to have to eat today, because if viewers have got the impression that I'm a man who doesn't necessarily plan things through properly, they are correct, because I got this and it goes out of date tomorrow. So there you go.
The People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. It's your first look at Thursday's newspapers. We're going to have a look at this filthy story in the Daily Mail. Who's got this?
I have, and it is so dumb, this story, that it feels like it should be a headline from the MASH report. And I can do quite a good impression of the guy who used to be a newsreader on there.
Yes.
Primary school, which introduced muddy play area, apologises to parents after children come home covered in mud.
Excellent. You got the intonation just right.
That's exactly how he used to do it. It wasn't great, was he? But this is Holsworth Primary School in Devon. They got a new feature in their playground, muddy areas.
Yes.
And somehow, top scientists can't fathom this, it meant that the kids got muddy.
Right.
And that's an actual story here. They've now written to the parents and say, please be reassured that plans are in place to limit the amount of exposure to the muddy areas until the hopefully drier season is upon us. Do they know how mud works? It won't be a muddy area in the drier season. Mud requires water and soil is the one that's got the bacteria that makes kids go blind, parasite rather. So that's the one to pick.
Is this just a school run by vegetables? I mean, honestly, this is
no, I think
animal-level stupidity.
No, I think there's a lot more to it. I mean, I like this quote that they say, this journey is new. The school has now said sorry to mothers and fathers, saying this journey is new. It's not that new, is it? Mud and kids and mud. But this journey, that bit was amusing. But what is interesting here is, in the past, we had kids organically playing with mud sometimes.
Sure.
But not all the time. What's happened now is we've gone so far the other way, and kids were developing asthma because things were too clean and so on. Now this is like kind of prescribed mud. So it's like we've got an actual muddy area, go in it. So now they get excessively muddy, and of course parents complain. It's like, why have you told my kid to get muddy? What works is letting kids sort of do what they want, within reason, which we used to have.
Yes.
But now we've gone so far the other way. Now we've gone like, OK, we need to force them into mud. And then that becomes weird because it's too much mud.
See, as kids, we used to go and play in the woods, in the park.
Yeah, and you do a reasonable amount of mud. But now it's like, go in the mud area. You can see why parents are affronted, because they're saying, oh, no, we're sending your kids into like pure mud and we're telling them to get in, and then you've got to wash it.
Yeah.
But if the kids enjoy it, just wash the darn clothes. I mean, I get to say this as a parent now, who does all the laundry.
Yeah,
wash the clothes.
You're wrong, because also the second theme here is that we now are led by children rather than adults, and we're in this helicopter, so we're terrified about children, and they run the society.
You only get this much of life when you can enjoy mud, and then you get to my age.
Enjoy mud in moderation, naturally, not by force designated.
Enjoy mud in moderation. That should be the slogan of this show. We're going to move on to this story now, and this is Oasis. What's this one about?
Dig out your hole. I mean, I don't know why they phrase it like that at the start. Oasis fans bury drugs in park 10 months before reunion gigs are held there. This is either a great way to get your drugs or a great way to get some squirrels off their face. They're going to be up all winter dancing. Fans boasted about burying the drugs in Heaton Park in Manchester to addiction counsellors.
And what is this, because they all get frisked on the way in, basically?
Yeah. So you'll just turn up and it'll be buried there. And it feels like, either they don't put this in a newspaper, because right now, if you go to the park and see some recently moved earth, it's where all the drugs are.
Yes.
But also, this was these are addiction counsellors. I think you're not very good at your job.
No.
The people you're counselling are burying drugs ready for a massive Oasis.
I mean, they're not going to be able to keep this out anyway, are they? I mean, it's a Brit-pop.
It's Oasis, isn't it?
It's Oasis, right?
I mean, Liam will be bringing most of them. I mean, can I make that claim? That's a satirical claim, Liam. Don't sue me. The phrase that struck me is members of the addiction community.
Yeah,
they have a community now. I didn't know that. That's nice.
And it's not just drugs.
They have a mud
shopping,
area. They play in.
Yeah,
it's really nice.
They do. It's lovely. Very sweet. Express now. Great news for dog owners. Nick, what's this?
This is Boffin, which you normally expect to see in the Star, but this is in the Express. Boffin invents high-tech drone poop copter that picks up dog mess. Minnesota-based inventor Caleb Olson says it's fully self-guided, fully capable of retrieving poop from grass, and it's full of word I probably can't even say at 5 a.m. when this goes out. But can we even say poop? Anyway, he's unsure. He's a prototype, so he doesn't know where to take it, whether to sell it direct to consumer, or whether there'll be a kind of poop man who drives around neighbourhoods like the bin man.
OK, Steve, what are your thoughts on this?
Best thing is, apparently, it can then lift the poop and leave it somewhere, or it can just go high and spin round. This...
what could possibly go wrong?
This has been invented to do hate crimes, hasn't it?
Yeah,
surely
sure.
This is just from the comfort of your own home.
But also, I worry about getting drones to do these everyday quotidian activities that we should be able to do ourselves, because it is the thin end of the wedge. This is how the computers...
Thin end of the poop.
Well, I mean, there's no need to be disgusting.
The Terminator prequel, where they start off by picking up poops.
But I think there's something in it,
Arnie just dragging himself towards it.
What's that film with? Is it Tom Selleck, the one with set in the future, written by Michael Crichton, where it's the robots looking after you, hoovering, and the basic and washing up. They turn and kill.
Gets acid in the face, doesn't it, from those spidery things?
Exactly. It's what's it called? Runaway? I think it's called Runaway.
Lawnmower Man.
It's not Lawnmower Man, Nick. We know Lawnmower Man. We see it's Runaway with Kirstie Alley in that as well. It's a damn good film, but it's chilling because it's coming true. We are going to be destroyed by toasters and things like that.
Toasters full of poop.
OK, well, that's all we got time for on that note. Let's have another quick look, though, at Thursday's front pages before we go. So the Daily Telegraph is leading with UK forces not up to defending Israelis. The Eye has got Israel vows rapid revenge strike on Iran. The Guardian, US warns Israel we won't support attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. The Daily Express has security chiefs fear rise in terror attacks in UK. And the Daily Mail is running with Starmer coughing up £6,000 to pay for his freebies. Finally, the Daily Star, line of duty stars sandwich torment, which we spoke about earlier for some reason. That's all we've got time for. Thanks to Steve and Nick. Simon Evans will be here tomorrow with Nick and Lewis. But if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, do stick around, because right now it's time for breakfast.
There are
There'll be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, it's going to be a cold night ahead with some frost and fog in places, but generally high pressure is building, bringing plenty of fine and settled weather to come. Still low pressure dominating across the south, so cloudier here with some showers, but high pressure in the north is building across the country, bringing plenty of fine and settled weather. Now, as we head into this evening, still some cloud across the south, but it is generally breaking up as we head into the overnight period, so leaving plenty of clear spells. Largely dry, though, still the chance of a few showers just poking into the southeastern coasts. But otherwise, a dry night for many, plenty of clear spells, so it will be feeling cold with some fog in places too, particularly in northern areas. Might just be a little bit slow to clear by the time we reach tomorrow morning as well. So as I say, particularly across Scotland, it will be feeling cold, likely to see some grass frost, may even see a little bit of frost on your cars during the early hours of the morning, and there will be fog in places too, so do take care when travelling. This generally lifting and breaking through the course of the morning, but as I say, there may be some stubborn fog, which is slow to clear. Largely dry across the south, still those showers just feeding in to the southeast coast. But as I say, high pressure building, bringing plenty of fine and settled weather across the country. There is still the chance of the odd shower across the southeast, but you'll probably be unlucky if you do catch any. Largely dry, plenty of sunny spells and some lighter winds as well. So even though temperatures are generally round about average with highs of around 16, 17 in the southeast, it'll probably feel more pleasant in those lighter winds. As we head into Friday, still plenty of fine and settled weather around, but low pressure is trying to edge its way into the west, so cloudier here with some outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. And there will still be plenty of fine, dry weather across the country as we head into the weekend, but we are expecting some more unsettled spells as well. So as always, stay tuned for all the details. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We love making our audience big cash winners, and you really could be next. With £36,000 tax-free cash in your bank account. Imagine getting the call about that.
Angela, you've won £30,000.
£30,000 cash?
Yes.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 25th of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Today, the beauty pageant. Yes, the four hopefuls for the Tory leadership had their presentations to the annual Conservative Party conference. Tonight we debate who is going to win. Did anybody go up or down today? And Sir Keir Starmer goes to Brussels. Yes, he does. It's all part of his EU reset. What did we learn from the speech he gave after the meeting? And a surge in migrant HIV cases in our country. This is people with HIV that have been born abroad. I've got to ask the question, is this really what the National Health Service is for? But before all of that, let's get the news with Cameron Walker.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister confirms there will be no return to freedom of movement in any reset of relations between the UK and the European Union. Sir Keir Starmer's been speaking at a press conference in Brussels, where he is meeting European Union chiefs with a promise to put the Brexit years behind us and form a closer relationship with the bloc. It's his first visit to Brussels as Prime Minister.
Now, of course, there will be issues which are difficult to resolve, and on areas on which we will stand firm. There will be no return to freedom of movement, no return to the customs union, no return to the single market. But we will find constructive ways to work together and deliver for the British people.
Well, it's emerged Sir Keir's paying back more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality received since he became Prime Minister. Downing Street's confirmed he's covering the costs of 6 Taylor Swift tickets, 4 to the races, and a clothing rental agreement with a high-end designer favoured by his wife, Lady Victoria Starmer. It comes after Sir Keir and other cabinet members who vowed to clean up British politics faced weeks of criticism for accepting tens of thousands of pounds worth of freebies from wealthy donors. President Biden says he does not support strikes on Iran's nuclear sites in response to its missile attack against Israel. Iran launched over 180 ballistic missiles at Israel last night, which the United States president previously called ineffective. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed that Iran will face consequences, with some analysts suggesting Israel's response could be more forceful this time, potentially targeting Iran's nuclear or oil facilities. Joe Biden has hinted at additional sanctions against Iran. The Conservative leadership candidates have reflected on their general election defeat in their final speeches at the party's conference in Birmingham. Tom Tugendhat, James Cleverly, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch are all appealing to members in their bids to replace Rishi Sunak. And finally, the Prince and Princess of Wales have met an aspiring teenage photographer with a rare and aggressive form of cancer after inviting her to take pictures at William's Windsor Castle investiture. The Princess, who has recently completed her own chemotherapy treatment and is a keen amateur photographer herself, was pictured hugging 16-year-old Liz from Harrogate. In a personal message on social media, William and Catherine said, "A pleasure to meet with Liz at Windsor today, a talented young photographer whose creativity and strength has inspired us both. Thank you for sharing your photos and story with us." Well, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Cameron Walker. Now it's back to Nigel.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Now, I know that 2/3 of the country couldn't give a damn who becomes the next Conservative leader. In fact, polling suggests 1/3 of those that even voted Conservative don't really care that much. But hey, it's happening and it's important. So, who is going to win this contest? And did we learn any clues today? Who's up? Who's down? Let's see a short clip from each of the 4 contestants in today's beauty pageant.
And never forget, reform didn't deliver Brexit, we did. Reform didn't cut immigration, I did. And mark my words, we will beat reform by being the best version of ourselves.
I will tell you what a Conservative is. Someone who believes in Britain, who believes in limited government, who believes in free trade and responsibility to others. Now, we are not afraid of the future.
I am for the country of Magna Carta, of the habeas corpus, of the Bill of Rights, defending our own freedoms and liberties. I am for finishing the job that we started with Brexit and restoring to our people and our Parliament its sovereignty.
The Conservatives have to be the party of wealth creation. Wealth is not a dirty word. It supports jobs and families. It pays for our schools and our health service. We should defend it and encourage it.
Well, I watched all of that very, very carefully live. My view was, Tom Tugendhat, perfectly nice chap, a little bit like someone teaching A-level geography or physics or perhaps something like that, not exactly bursting with charisma. James Cleverly, I thought the content of what he said was absolute nonsense from my perspective, but I thought he delivered it really very, very well. Here was somebody assured and experienced, didn't look nervous. I think, frankly, a very good performance from Cleverly. Now, when it comes to Jenrick, the great Brexiteer, who voted Remain, basically, he's trying to be Nigel Farage. Now, look, if you want, Robert, lessons in being Nigel Farage, I'm very happy to coach you. So, of course, in terms of policy, I agreed with a lot of what he said myself, but I frankly thought he was a bit of a charisma-free zone. And then Kemi Badenoch, well, very heavily scripted. Staring at that order queue at the back of the hall, but telling the audience a lot of what they wanted to hear. But there was one standout moment, one moment that made me laugh out loud that I think was delivered brilliantly, and it came from James Cleverly.
And one day, I got the call. I got mobilised. I thought I was going to Basra or Baghdad, and I was sent to Luton.
That still makes me laugh. And it was good and it was clever because actually self-deprecation in this country still works very, very well. So my view is whatever the starting positions were, I had little doubt that it was Cleverly that made advances today. And I felt Jenrick actually was going backwards. That is my take on it. But tell me, at home, who do you think's going to win? Farage at GBNews.com. Sir Jake Berry is a former Member of Parliament and former chairman of the Conservative Party, and Lloyd Russell-Moyle, former Labour Member of Parliament. Jake, what did you make of today?
Well, it's been a very interesting conference. I'm not sure how important it was, because actually the only people who are going to have a vote on whittling these four Tory titans down to two are the MPs.
Are they
frankly,
titans?
Frankly, Nigel, I didn't see many colleagues at conference. I was there. I went for a day and a half, a couple of days. Yeah. There weren't that many there. Look, at the conference, Tom Tugendhat undoubtedly, in my view, someone I'm supporting, had the best conference. There was a buzz about him. The members event he did was packed. Look, I don't think he was the best performer today, but I don't think that particularly matters. James Cleverly is great.
To be honest,
what I would say is this.
Tom looked nervous, I thought.
Well, of course he's nervous. It's the official opposition. They're standing for a really important job, as you say. Yeah. And what I would say is this. I think the mistake you admit, I love James. He's fantastic. He's party chairman, just like me. He's very polished. It was a good performance today, but he stood on that stage, I think, half a dozen times or more and made that speech to conference. He's got muscle memory for it. No wonder he was good. He should have been. I like to think this competition actually isn't about who's going to be good today, but about who's going to be there in 4 years. So, James, maybe the close to the finish article today, but I think both Rob, Kemi and Tom, we won't know what they'll be in 4 years' time. And I just happen to think, out of all of them, and I've made my view clear here on the show before, that he has actually got what it takes. And, giving a good speech is something you can learn, but having the right heart and the right values is something you're born with.
But you've got to get that very fickle electorate of 121 Tory MPs. You've got to be in the last two. Who's going to be the last two?
So I'd like to... So I think it just matters who goes out next. So I think if Tom goes out next, I think he makes the last two, because I think there's a big part of the Conservative Party who will say, we want a real, in terms of the MPs, we want a real choice. We want someone who's more of a centrist and someone who's more right. So that's what I think will happen. If Tom goes out next, then I think James will make the last two. I think it's Tom or James versus Rob Jenrick.
And Jenrick, you know...
Bobby J, as we have to now call him.
I know. I mean, I have to say, he was trying ever so hard. The arms were whirring around. I mean, is this conversion to reform-style policies, is it real?
Well, I've seen it quite a lot with colleagues. I must say I've been on a bit of a journey myself, as people say, because the more time you spend in government, the more you realise that the only thing you really want to do is tear the whole place down and start again. So I'm sure it is real. I don't think the Conservative Party can out-reform. You are going to outflank us on immigration. You're probably going to outflank us on culture wars. So we've got to be really careful that when we choose the next leader, we don't try and become a reform light or a pressure group on immigration or culture wars, because you don't win elections from that position. You can do remarkably well, and Reform did amazingly at the last general election. But you won 5 MPs. We can have an argument about whether the electoral system is fair. I'm sure it's not.
Not today.
I know it's not.
Not today.
But, you know, we've got to not fall into the trap the Labour Party fell into, which is elect someone who makes you feel good and agrees with lots of your views in Jeremy Corbyn, but then proves to be electorally unpopular.
Which is a very fair point.
We need the whole rounded political person who can win back from the Lib Dems, win back from Reform, and crucially win back from Labour.
See, it's very interesting you say that, because I actually think there's a realignment going on in politics across the Western world, and that people who vote for centre-right parties now tend to have much stronger feelings and opinions than they had before. So I think this idea that you can win back voters from all of those different leakages, I think it's for the birds, Jake.
But of course, I think it's 80 seats in the country where Reform's in second place to the Labour Party. So I'm sure part of Reform's electoral strategy is to try and win votes from the Labour Party.
Oh, it will be.
So you don't necessarily think it's for the birds, because it's actually your strategy.
No. Our strategy is to recognise that the centre-right of politics now in the Western world actually is more working class than middle class. And that's the fundamental change. And people who've gone to Reform or gone to the Lib Dems from your party, very tough to get them both back.
Time will tell.
Well, Lloyd, who's the one that Labour would fear, do you think, of those four, or none of them?
Well, it's very difficult. I have a feeling that it might be electing the next leader of the opposition, but not necessarily the next Prime Minister. And we saw this. I understand that there was a joke going around a Conservative Party conference where people were asking who were different cabinet members in last time the Conservatives were in opposition, and people couldn't remember who was the shadow chancellors, who were because they all disappear into nothingness really after a while. And I suspect that might be the case this time. I don't think it's going to be easy for Labour to win the next election either, but I do think that at the moment the odds are not stacked in the Conservatives' favour. I personally think a moderate makes it harder for Labour.
So a Cleverly?
And I think a Cleverly or a Tugendhat. And I think a kind of a Brexit Party, Reform Party light person actually does exactly what we've heard is it just means that your two parties fight each other but don't really appeal to the electorate. And if the electorate really want the real deal, they'll vote Reform. They're not going to kind of come along and say, oh, the Conservatives are offering half of what Reform is. Oh, yes, I quite wanted half of that. You know, kind of they either want it or they don't want it.
You either want a pint, you never want to drink a half, do you? You want the full pint.
Exactly.
When Cameron offered the referendum back in 2013 under huge pressure from the UKIP surge, people said, well, that's it. The UKIP fox has been shot. And actually, what Cameron did was legitimise a position that UKIP had that was considered beyond the pale. Overnight, what we stood for became respectable. And in a sense, what Jenrick is doing on leaving ECHR is making the position that I've put out there kind of a bit more respectable. This will be, Jake, the 6th leader since 2016.
I'm struggling to keep up. I don't know about you, Nigel.
How many housing ministers there?
I know. It's almost like the worst days of the UKIP party, isn't it?
Well, yes, but I think by the time that happened, they'd probably...
You were well out.
They'd probably served their purpose. The point I'm making is, it doesn't really matter who the next leader is. It doesn't really matter what the new set of policies are. Isn't the truth of it that for now, and for some years to come, that the Conservative brand is broken? That those people that voted for it in 2019, of the 50% that left, most of them actually feel betrayed by the Conservative Party and loathe it. The brand is now the problem.
Absolutely. At the moment, it's absolutely the problem. 5 years is a long time in politics, and there is the opportunity for whoever the next leader is, and I hope they do, to rebuild that brand. One of the challenges with the leadership election, you've sort of heard it from quite a lot of the candidates, is their message is, well, actually, the problem at the election is we didn't shout loud enough. Well, in fact, the real problem is it didn't matter how loud we shouted, no one was listening because we trashed our own brand. So the first job of any leader is to work out how they rebuild trust. And, you know, the Conservative brand lost its reputation for competence. You'd never buy a car that you know is going to break down, would you? And trust, so you won't vote for a government who you don't think can actually do things.
And trust is not rebuilt overnight.
It's not. It's not. And that's why I think, actually, when the members do think about who's going to be the next leader, the decision isn't, can this person win a general election tomorrow? Clearly, they won't be able to do that. The decision should be, can this person rebuild trust in our brand to put us in a competitive place at the next general election? What I did think was interesting about the Conservative Party conference, there was almost a sort of false dawn. I was walking around and talking to people and said, oh, you know, things are going really well. And I think, God, they're not. They're absolutely bloody terrible. They're absolutely terrible. And the Labour Party doing badly, and it's beyond doubt that they're doing very, very badly, is not the same thing as the Conservative Party
I think
doing
that's
well.
absolutely right.
But it also doesn't help. I mean, Boris actually did disappear a little bit, able to rebuild his image. It doesn't really help that Liz Truss is still rattling around, making interventions every now and again, because it kind of reminds people about the wrecking of the Conservative brand. And you kind of need her to disappear a bit more than she has, probably, to be able to rebuild.
I don't think just she wrecked the Conservative brand.
No, but I mean, I assume that Rishi will go off to California. We won't see him again. You know, Boris has kept a bit quiet and is rebuilding his brand in a different kind of way. But Liz is kind of hanging around there, and I'm not sure that that's particularly helpful. I do wonder if a Canadian solution might be the only way forward, and we know what the Canadian solution is. The Progressive Conservative Party ruined their brand, were destroyed, and a party called Reform, I think
it's something like that. Do you know, Lord, I'm so relieved that you didn't say a Switzerland solution. Though, which would have been absolutely terminal.
Well, enough of that. Let's talk about the Labour Party. Let's talk about Keir Starmer's visit to Brussels and the £6,000 that apparently he is repaying some of the donations he took from Lord Ali. All of that after the break.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hooray!
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, some of your reactions at home to this gripping Conservative leadership contest. Tammy says, who cares? The Conservatives will only stab the winner in the back and then replace them. That's what they do. And that's why they lost the election. They should have kept Boris and they would have won again. No, I don't think they would have done personally. George says, Nigel, I have a hunch that Kemi Badenoch will have the greatest appeal to younger voters. May be true, but what I did think was interesting, looking at the clips of the conference and reports from people that have been there, it does appear that your man's getting the support of the younger people.
Yeah, Tom, he really was in the conference. He was mobbed everywhere.
Quite interesting.
He had an event and everyone couldn't get in, so he had to literally go outside and address them on a soapbox to tell them what he was going to say.
Struck me as being interesting. Final thought from you at home. John says, got to be generic. He's pretty sensible. Surely not cleverly. He's too full of himself. Kemi thinks she's Cleopatra and Tugendhat will say anything to get it. Oh, I love these responses. Now. Keir Starmer goes off to Brussels today to meet the bigwigs, saying he wants to put the Brexit years behind us. What on earth does that mean? Here he was at the press conference afterwards.
Now, of course, there will be issues which are difficult to resolve, and on areas on which we will stand firm. There will be no return to freedom of movement, no return to the customs union, no return to the single market. But we will find constructive ways to work together and deliver for the British people.
So the one real difference that I can see between the last government and this government is on matters of the European Defence Union, where clearly Labour want to be more involved. But what does it all mean, Lloyd? I mean, we're not going to rejoin any of these things. So how's the relationship going to change?
It is interesting that it was the European defence aspects, which were the controversial parts of the Lisbon Treaty and the European Constitution, that meant it all fell apart. And it was Britain that was saying we want no European defence coordination. That's what NATO is for. It's very interesting now that it seems to all be forgotten, and suddenly that's the bit that we're happy to go in on.
I haven't forgotten it, I can assure you.
But, that's the narrative. We're happy to go in on that because Ukraine seems to have changed the... Well, is the implication, therefore, that NATO is not working, or that people are worried about what's going to happen in America, that means that they want to create an alternative structure? I'm not sure alternative structures are very good, and particularly an alternative structure that will be controlled by the European Union. We will be a kind of semi-voting member of having a say, but
Very
not a
sensible.
say. Either in or out. I mean, you've got to decide. But on freedom of movement stuff, I think that at the moment he's got his rhetoric certainly muddled up with some of the youth mobility programmes.